Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, the Biden administration's national security advisor talks to Israeli leaders about the next phase of the war against Hamas. And a Virginia mother is facing more time in prison on additional charges related to her 6-year-old son shooting his first-grade teacher in January.
Plus, rain chances return later this weekend. Those details coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. The Israeli military says it expresses deep remorse after 3 hostages were killed by what it called a friendly fire incident in Gaza. This comes as U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan traveled to the region to urge Israel to be more controlled in its bombing. CBS's Natalie Brand has more from the White House.
During military operations in Gaza, the Israel Defense Forces says 3 hostages were mistakenly identified as a threat and killed during fighting. The identities released do not include Americans who remain unaccounted for. The development comes as U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visits the region, talking to leaders about the next phase of the war.
This fight against Hamas, a deeply entrenched terrorist group in Gaza, is going to take time, and it's going to happen in phases.
2 U.S. officials say the Israelis told the United States that the current phase of their offensive against Hamas, which includes heavy airstrikes, could be complete in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
There will be a transition to another phase of this war, one that is focused in more precise ways on targeting the leadership and on intelligence-driven operations that continues to deal with the ongoing threat that Hamas poses.
The Israeli defense minister told Sullivan that particular phase of the war could be a long one, lasting more than several months. Sullivan also met Friday with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who lost control of Gaza when Hamas took over in 2007. The two discussed Gaza's future post-war, which still remains unclear. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The U.S. says it is still committed to a 2-state solution with Palestinian rule, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he disagrees with his American allies about that issue. Western officials are warning Ukraine is certain to fail without more U.S. aid. This comes as an aid package continues to stall in Congress. Kyiv has an ongoing counteroffensive in the east and south where forces have struggled to make progress. A European diplomat says they don't know if they'll be able to succeed without more aid from the U.S. and Europe. One senior U.S. military official estimated Ukraine would only be able to hold on for months.
We are tracking some nice weather as we go into your Friday evening. Here's a live look across the mountains as we are on sunset watch this evening. Here's a live look from I-64 in Moorhead, and check out that beautiful sunset over in Rowan County. So again, some more nice weather is on the way as we go into this evening, and those temperatures for the middle of December are fantastic. Lower 50s in the Big Sandy Valley, some middle to upper 50s in the Cumberland Valley, up to 56 for London, 55 in Somerset, 57 over in Monticello. So again, we are mild on this Friday evening, and that will continue as we go into your Saturday as well. Up on first alert pinpoint Doppler, again, we are dry as high pressure is the big story. As we zoom out, you can see that area of high pressure that is sitting off the eastern coast, but as we look back to the west, we are tracking an upper level low over Kansas, also Oklahoma, and all this moisture is pushing into our region by late Saturday, also on Sunday. And after this system, we are much cooler by early next week and maybe a few snowflakes by Monday. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
All right, thank you, Cameron. A former Facebook employee has pleaded guilty to stealing more than $4 million. Starting in 2017, going through 2021, Barbara Furlow Smiles worked as a lead strategist at Facebook, now known as Meta. According to the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, Furlow Smiles fraudulently used Facebook funds to live a lavish lifestyle in California and Georgia. The money was used on things such as hairstylists and babysitters. A Virginia mother is facing more time in prison on additional charges related to her 6-year-old son shooting his first-grade teacher in January. The high-profile case further illuminating America's worsening epidemic of children and guns in school, and where parental accountability and legal consequences come into play. CNN's Laura Aguirre has more on this state-level case that could have a national legal impact in the future.
For the second time in exactly 1 month, Virginia mother Deja Taylor has been sentenced on charges related to a shooting, but not because she pulled the trigger. Her 6-year-old son did in January at Rich Neck Elementary in Newport News. The state of Virginia charged Taylor with 1 count of felony child neglect. Prosecutors say she left her gun unlocked and in reach of her first grader, who then took the weapon to school in a backpack, where authorities say he shot his teacher, Abby Zwerner, wounding her in the hand and chest. Taylor pleaded guilty to 2 federal charges earlier this year related to the case, including that she used drugs while possessing a firearm. She was sentenced to 21 months in November. At that time, Taylor's attorney said his client was incredibly remorseful.
She's filled with guilt, and at no time did she intend or foresee the consequences of what she did.
Friday afternoon, Taylor was sentenced on the state child neglect felony charge after pleading guilty last month. Prosecutors say her young son, whom they describe as having extreme emotional issues, will not be charged. Zwerner has filed a $40 million lawsuit alleging Newport News public schools and administrators ignored warning signs and the child's history of random violence. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
The boy is now in the custody of his great-grandfather, and Taylor's lawyer says the child is in therapy and showing improvement. Taylor has no criminal record and has cooperated with authorities since the shooting, her lawyer has said in previous statements. She initially turned herself in to police in April after the filing of state charges. A man convicted of randomly murdering a retired couple in Massachusetts faces 100 years in prison. The Boston Globe reports the judge called Logan Clegg a stone-cold murderer during sentencing today. His possible motive for killing Stephen and Jaswindi Reed after encountering them on a hiking trail last year is still unclear. He still claims he is innocent and called the proceedings biased during sentencing in Boston. Clegg says he plans to appeal. Earlier today, the Michigan State University Board of Trustees voted unanimously to release thousands of pages of documents related to the Larry Nassar scandal. The university has been criticized for its handling of the Nassar investigation and its dealings with survivors in the aftermath of the sports doctor's arrest and conviction. In 2018, he was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison after he admitted to sexually molesting hundreds of athletes. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has filed a formal complaint against a federal judge who has overseen January 6th related cases. In her complaint, the House GOP conference chairwoman accuses U.S. District Court Judge Burl Howell of judicial misconduct. The New York representative has requested an ethics investigation, saying the Obama-appointed judge gave a highly inappropriate political speech in November. CNN is set to host 2 GOP presidential debates next month, but it's unclear if the frontrunner will attend. The first is on January 10th in Iowa, just 5 days before caucuses in that state. And the second is scheduled for January 21st in New Hampshire. For now, 3 candidates meet the polling thresholds required for participation. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley says she will attend, and she's calling on former President Donald Trump to do the same. President Biden and former President Barack Obama are coming out with a new video vowing to protect and expand the Affordable Care Act. It starts with the president reading a text message that asks, quote, "Hey, President Biden, is Obamacare still a thing?" President Biden then turns to Obama and says, "It is. Is it still a thing?" And then Obama replies, "The health insurance marketplace is alive and well," but warns of Donald Trump's promise to trash it if he's reelected. Former First Lady Melania Trump made a rare public appearance at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. today. The former First Lady was there to attend a naturalization ceremony for 25 new citizens from various nations. After they were sworn in, Mrs. Trump shared her personal immigration experience from arriving in the U.S. from Slovenia in 1996 to finally becoming a citizen in 2006.
For me, reaching the milestone of American citizenship marked the sunrise of certainty. At that exact moment, I forever discarded the layer of burden connected with whether I would be able to live in the United States.
The appearance comes nearly 2 years after the National Archives and Record Administration asked the DOJ to investigate former President Trump's handling of White House records.